On the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle. Hope everybody out there's having themselves a great day. Got a bunch of Q posts going on, and a really exciting kind of momentum seems to be building right now. Definitely some attention being called to us, the Patriots, and I think a bit of a call of action, at least to be mindful, to say the very least, of the plan that's going on. Now, there's a couple things. One, we got to be mindful of the plan of what they're trying to do against us. One, take away our right to vote, which is essentially a mail-in ballot. And they're going to do this by any number of ways, and we're going to see some of examples of this. So they're going to try to take away our right to vote. They're going to try to keep us from being able to assemble, talk, and join together. They're going to try to silence any of the electronic means of communicating to one another. And so there's this plan to kind of try to shut down the voice, shut down this movement, shut down these awakened people that are coming. But we see this plan, and we're dealing with this accordingly. Now, Trump and team, they are definitely handling things from their side. They're fleshing out some of these horrible deep state swamp creatures. And from our side individually, we're being strong. We're learning to discern the truth. We're waking up to some of these crazy things that they've been telling us. We're starting to question some of the things that we're told. We don't necessarily just believe everything. Now, one thing I want to ask that not all of us are doing is to be kind to one another, even those on the other side, even those that are Democrats, that don't necessarily understand the bigger picture, that don't necessarily maybe see that our rights are being taken away of. Sure, there's a percentage of people that are very progressive, but a good chunk of people, many people, are kind of more left center, kind of in that more left, old left place, and we can have discussions, we can talk, we can figure out ways to meet in the middle. But this absolute name-calling, absolute hatred amongst the Americans, amongst the fellow Americans, is not benefiting us. So we, being on the side of correct, being on the side of righteousness, being on the side of God, need to sometimes do the righteous thing. Sometimes we need to be the bigger person and behave appropriately when others maybe are being small. It's the only small thing I ask from everybody. Q posts, again, a whole bunch came out. So 4325 is where we left off. The D's, targets in bold, in coordination with the Democrat and foreign assets, have launched an as-known, a full-scale insurgency. This attack is against the people of the United States, and it's in an effort to regain power by any means necessary. All assets deployed. Current landscape, target bold brackets, which means it's kind of in the target brackets, right? It's being referenced for those that maybe are new to this. Current landscapes are coordinated and deliberate events to impact or rig the presidential election. This is a war, folks. It's a war against the silent enemy. It's a war against the hidden enemy. And the hidden enemy is the deep state. The hidden enemy is the one that pretends that it's here to benefit us as the people, but in reality is doing secret, sneaky, backroom, dangerous, dark, not okay kinds of things, maybe getting money from different sources and causing some problems. So the future of our republic is at stake. There's no question about it, especially with voting coming into play and them trying to take this right away from us. Survival as a nation, the patriots, all of us, we have to love our brothers and sisters, even the ones that are in the South. After Lincoln releases this all, right? We need to make sure that we're still able to deal with this little civil war that's going on. We need to love our fellow man. That is the most important thing. We rise or we die. And that's the bottom line. And we, the people, Q. This is a beautiful post, and I love it. Love the flag. It's so awesome. It's fun actually having one of those behind you in an image. It's just cool. It feels like you're a president, right? Post 4326. We are in for one heck of a show, as they would say. Someone in here, I think, was suggesting that that was probably Trump that posted that. Where was it here? Yeah, something sounds like something POTUS would say. I like that other people think that too, because I swear to God, there's times where I think Trump's gotten a hold of a Q machine, right, and just starts typing in random stuff and doesn't come in as Q plus, which is what he's supposed to show up as when it's actually him. There's some notable update stuff that kind of popped through with this one, and I thought it was kind of cool, worth at least doing a quick check on. But how fear groupthink drove unnecessary global lockdowns. I mean, that's really how this played out. And groupthink is something that's very done by programming, and a lot of the people that are still asleep are very heavily programmed and affected by this groupthink. One of the hardest things about waking up is actually getting to the place where you don't care what other people think. And that is very hard for a lot of humans to do. It is. It's just naturally not something we like to do. So a new AP talking point, a new news agency talking point, hit Peace has pre-mask footage of press pool. Again, before they were wearing masks. 2019 Q post, GOP senators demand DOJ update on the Planned Parenthood fetal tissue probe. So this was all happening leading right up into this, right? So again, a lot of people think that maybe things sort of happened in the world, got released, if you will, trying to choose words carefully, but maybe this happened with an intention. And I think a lot of us that are awakened already go, for sure, duh. But for some that are kind of on the fence, maybe not sure about this whole Q movement, and we've got some people that feel that way, certainly something to keep in mind that there was this interesting movement. Trump was having rallies, massive amounts of people were supporting it. There was a very strong flow that they had to figure out how to squish that down, right? How to push that, tamp that down, smack that whack-a-mole, and hopefully nothing else pops up. CNN's Don Lemon slams Twitter for not deleting Trump tweets. This happened. David Daladian? Whatever. Fight ruling forcing him to pay Mills for exposing the Planned Parenthood things that were going on. We just did an article recently that had a bunch of nurses that were talking about the crazy stuff that they were doing. And that was actually the post that started, that ended yesterday's. Chinese yuan suddenly is tumbling, which again, they supposedly did some currency stuff when they started paying us extra money, when we were hitting them up with the tariffs. They did something weird with their economy. I'm not an economist here, but and it definitely is not okay. It's not something we're allowed to do where they like cut it in half or redistribute it or whatever the heck it was. Taking a skate park back in Newsom, filled it with sand. Like, that's just insanity. That's pretty cool that we took the skate park back, right? So, but the fact that they filled it with sand, this is actually something that's popped into my head a bunch of times. This is ridiculous. But again, just a whole lot of things have been going on. Trump campaign, Twitter, fact check, proof of Silicon Valley obstruction. There's a lot that our Anons have done that have pulled this information to us. Trump has done some trolling to kind of get the news media to talk about it. We had a senator recently that had talked about this Q movement and then had their publicist took her post down, so which is interesting. We'll get to it. I'm just teasing a little of what's coming up. Post 4327. Australian researchers. This is in the Washington Times. Very interesting. They say it's reliable reporting, the right opinion. I don't know, whatever. I think that's a pretty bold statement to make. It's an article. It's a news article. But a forthcoming Australian scientific study concludes that the coronavirus causing the global pandemic contains a unique property suggesting it was manipulated in a Chinese laboratory. Now, I've heard some other sources, and I don't know for sure, but that this is actually possibly seen time in 3 different laboratories. This is one of those things where Q is frequently talked about where we can't necessarily know the truth fully, because if we did, we might be really, really angry. But supposedly US, Canada, and then Wuhan is probably where they did the finishing touches and then apparently released it, because that seems to be the epicenter. So 5 scientists who have conducted this study, again, Washington Times, discovered an unusual ability of the SARS-CoV-2 virus, as the pathogen behind the COVID-19 is called. And what's interesting about this particular form of the virus is it easily infects humans, which is really weird that what they're saying, the way this plays out is kind of strange. They see no signs so far that the virus can be found in other animals. Again, another strange thing, because they're talking about like bats or any other crazy exotic wildlife at the wet market. They can't find any other animals that have this version, this particular vector in this virus is very questionable. It's strange. It doesn't seem to exist naturally in nature. That's sort of redundant, but doesn't matter. So the virus's binding strength for human cells far exceeds similar properties for infecting other animals. So this thing is really good at infecting humans. Some viruses cross over, right? You got pigs and humans, and sometimes they'll share viruses. That's why we get insulin from pigs, right? So some things will cross over boundaries very easily, right? Even sometimes from like cat to dog, or cat to dog to human. It's rare, but it can happen. But this is oddly very, very good at infecting humans. It seems weaponized. Now, very likely, China is who's going to be blamed, probably should be blamed, probably certainly is playing a part, because I think it's the deep state no matter what. And the deep state seems to be in China and planning on staying there, or at least that was the original plan. And now that may be up in the air because it sounds like the deep state's going to be broken. Trump's words, but he's probably going to be the one president who's able to break them. Post 4328. Got another Twitter post here that I want to share with you. Nancy Pelosi. Friggin' love her. Being sarcastic, and I just didn't want to say all the horrible things. Because if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all, right? Was this ever about health and well-being of people? That's what they keep kind of trying to say, right? No, we want you to be healthy. We're worried about you being able to be healthy in the election. Even though the election's in November and we're just about to start June. And so I don't know about you and me, but just doing some quick math, that's July, August, September, October, November, and 5 months. Okay, 4, right? Because it's beginning of November. 4 months. Really? Seems to be way ahead of schedule, and considering a lot of things are opening up, a lot of healthy people are running around out there, and we're starting to realize a lot more about this particular virus and who it impacts, who it typically has more high risk with it. In fact, there's an article we're going to hop to here in a little bit from Italy that they realized something very interesting about 96% of all the fatalities. 96%. So anyways, was this ever about the virus, do you think? I mean, I think there's been a lot of evidence to suggest it might not be about the virus. I know Occam's razor, the virus seems like it's the easier choice. But sometimes Occam's razor is not the right answer. And I think that's kind of the case with some of these things that are happening to us. So this has always been about the election. I think that's pretty much a point we're trying to make. Let's check out Nancy Pelosi's wonderful minute-long annoyance. Just her demonstrating how much she's a horrible person. It's a lot of fun.
The fact is, as a former chair of the California Democratic Party, I can tell you Republicans have always enjoyed much success with vote by mail. The absentee ballots have never been a good moment for us over time. So they know how to use the mail for their voting. And there's no scientific study that says one party or the other benefits from it. But this is now a health issue. We talk about saving the lives, testing the livelihood, the economy, and the life of our democracy. Vote by mail. Now people have to choose between their health and their vote. That shouldn't be the case. We should always be removing obstacles of participation to the vote. That is the sacred right of our democracy to vote. Remove obstacles. But at a time of a pandemic, even more important to give people an option that is not a risk to their lives as well.
So let me just translate a couple things in there. First off, it's about health and welfare. No, that's not true. It's actually, if it were about things like that, then the fact that we can go to grocery stores, the fact that we can even open up any place and keep social distancing, obviously we can have a voting place where you've got little lines taped out in front of the place where you can stand 6 feet apart. I mean, please, that's ridiculous. So, okay, shoot that point down. The next point, it seems, is that she wants to be able to make it easier for people to vote wrong or incorrectly. It's one thing to have to show up in person and present some form of ID, or at least to know that this individual came in and cast a vote, versus one individual could potentially take the form that the voting is done, scan it, print it, and you just got to get similar stock paper, right? Probably not hard to do. Print it, and then shoot, you could fill it out 100 times. Or you could give it to all your friends, or you could do any number of things. Or if you have a Republican friend, you could even make sure to take their voting thing out of the mailbox, or any number of things. Again, it's too easy to cheat. That's why it's not okay to do that. That's why voting must stay the way voting has always been. Just because this 100-year pandemic has shown up doesn't mean we go and change the Constitution for this one particular year. Everything will go back to some form of normalcy or a new version of normalcy. But things are going to get back to some form of regular. So thank you, Nancy Pelosi, but you can just kind of stay where you're at. I'd prefer that. Post 4329. If elderly are most at risk, and this is known or knowingly, right? Why would you then order COVID-19 positive patients back into nursing homes? Hospital capacity? Maybe. USNS comfort capacity, supposedly 750 beds. There is a little point I want to make on this, and I still think his point, I think Q's point is perfect, but there's just a small caveat, small asterisk. Give me that. But ignorant, A, or deliberate, B. Now, I'm reading this two ways. Typically, when you've got multiple choice, and that's how some people have read this, that you would say A, ignorant, or B, deliberate. So that's usually how choices are done. You do the letter first and the answer, then the letter, then the answer. But sometimes, if you're doing it this way, my mind, and it's probably just because I'm a dirty bird or something, I don't know, but ignorant, so there's two forms of people that would potentially do what they're talking about here. And obviously we're talking about Cuomo, putting these patients that are positive COVID back into nursing homes, the highest risk people possible. Like, you couldn't find another more high-risk group of people, and then you take someone that's knowingly infected with a disease that passes human to human, very, very dangerous to older people, already knew that, right? You take that sick person and shove them in around a bunch of people that are high risk, just to see what happens. So, from that vantage point, someone that knowingly does that, are they an ignorant arse? I'm saying the word nicely. Or are they a deliberate bastage? So that was kind of how I read it the first time. Accountability options outside the ballot box, meaning other than the ballot box. Is there some sort of accountability? We got to wonder, right? Because, everyone's seen some of the stuff that Cuomo's doing. We got a minute plus here of a neat little interview between these two. Actually, it's a good interview. You should definitely enjoy this.
And on top of that, Brian, when he issued his guidance, and then in April, he initiated an investigation into the nursing homes. And even when he reversed himself finally on May 10th, after 6 weeks and thousands of deaths, he then again implied that it was the nursing home fault and that they were going to be under investigation. This was another reason. By the way, when he issued this order, it was effective immediately. It gave nursing homes no warning. They did not have even the time to prepare if they thought they could, and they treated all nursing homes the same. So then they were under the burden, the nursing home owners, of thinking they were going to lose their license if they didn't do this. And the guidance said that you have no choice. You're not allowed to know. You're not allowed to test. And it's an extraordinary thing when now you've got Cuomo, who is blaming at one point God, saying it would have happened anyway, now blaming Trump. Imagine being the person who set up a dynamic where you have thousands of deaths and you just are deciding to point fingers elsewhere. And these are the same people who are still making life and death decisions for New Yorkers. The same problem existed in New Jersey, who pretty much copied Cuomo's language. But here, they're the same people. Cuomo is blithely walking along, making orders and deciding on life and death of New Yorkers.
Just the fact that she used blithely. I just love that word. That's awesome. But again, and I'm sorry, but I love the fact that Cuomo, just all of his little hand gestures, he's Italian. That's how he talks. He talks with his hands. But still, I do too. That being said, there's a lot being pointed out here, right? Obviously, Cuomo's granted immunity to nursing home executives. Interesting. So took them out of the loop. So you're not responsible. I made the decision, signed my name on it. And if there's question of that, I've got proof. I signed my name to this, but it's not my fault because I was following President Trump's advisory board, right? So again, this guy blamed God, blamed Trump, blamed Trump's administration, blamed everyone else other than himself because it couldn't possibly be his fault. That would be silly. How could it ever be a Democrat's fault? I don't think have reflections. My guess is they're vampires, and I'm hoping they wake up, and I still love you as vampires, don't get me wrong, but I'm assuming you don't see your reflection when you look in a mirror. I'm guessing, because it's just odd how much projection seems to happen from the left. It's just strange. Anywho, yeah, we got more. New York Health website deletes Cuomo's order linked to the nursing home fatality. So he had an order that he probably assumed he could just go ahead and hit delete and it would go away forever. And then they say, no, he didn't really delete it. He just did a directive and somehow got around. All right, whatever. Tomato, I don't care. Interesting, though, because I happen to have this Andrew M. Cuomo He's the governor. I don't know if you knew that in New York, but yeah, he's got this advisory. Hospital discharges. COVID-19 has been detected in multiple communities throughout New York State. There is an urgent need to expand hospital capacity in New York State to be able to meet the demand for patients with COVID-19 requiring acute care. As a result, this directive is being issued to clarify expectations for nursing homes receiving residents returning from hospitalization and for nursing homes accepting new admissions. Hospital discharge planning staff and nursing homes should carefully review this guidance, blah, blah, blah. During this global health emergency, all NHS must comply with this immediately. So they must immediately do this, right? Expedite receipt of residents returning from hospitals. Residents are deemed appropriate to return to NH upon a determination by the hospital physician or designee that the resident is medically stable for return. Hospital discharge planners must confirm the blah, blah, blah. Where is it? Does it get into the COVID? Here it is. No resident shall be denied readmission or admission to the nursing home solely based on a confirmed or suspected diagnosis of COVID-19. Right there. And the way this played out, the way this got released, it was released like this happens to happen. It has to happen now, has to happen immediately, and you guys just need to figure it out. And the only way they were allowed, supposedly, to turn people away was if they had absolutely no way to truly quarantine anybody that came back. And apparently that was a bit more of a challenge. So one thing that came up, and I'm going to give a couple points, maybe, but I think if I remember correctly, we'll see. So anyway, March 25th is when this directive, or whatever the hell they call these things, happened. Okay, so this is when he made this crazy acclamation. USNS Comfort arrived in New York on the 30th, right? So it happened on the 30th. It wasn't the 25th yet, but the Comfort, I think, was already en route, or if not anything, I'm sure Cuomo knew this was coming. So he knew that he had 750 beds coming to the New York Harbor, like close enough, like an ambulance ride, and bam, you're there. So, I don't know. It just seems, again, he needed hospital beds. I get it. As it turned out, it was far from that. It was complete total opposite. But, okay. Initially, we were supposed to have gazillions dead within the first 48 hours or some crazy thing, right? So, obviously, that didn't happen. And so we prepared for the end of the world, and it wasn't quite there yet. But, just wanted to throw some extra information at you. This is your decision. So come on. 4330, next post, and we're getting there, goes. Your voice and your vote are what matters most. Now, obviously, whoever typed this was yelling at us or angry because it's all caps. My gosh. But your voice and your vote are what matters most. This is super important for all of us. The idea of giving up that right. The idea of making it easy to falsify or fake. Now, whether or not there's truth or scientific evidence that suggests that it benefits Democrats or maybe benefits Republicans, it doesn't matter. It should be a fair and balanced election, right? We're patriots. We're Americans. Yeah, we like Trump. Yeah, we want our side to win. Yeah, we definitely don't want the deep state to get back into office because that'll probably mean the end of the world and all of our rights. But let's give them a chance. Let's give the vote. Let's do this right. I think there's going to be more of us that are going to vote the same way than vote against Trump. And if not, and we try to say, well, if that's the case, then we're just going to take the election anyway, then we're no different than them, are we? If we're willing to do anything at any cost to win the election, then we're no different than the deep state. And that is the difference. We're from God. We're from love. We're from the heart. We're from the patriotic. We remember America. We have a Constitution, the Bill of Rights. That is who we are. We honor our servicemen. We go to church. We pray for people. We actually care. And there's a big difference between a lot of these people. So we are witnessing an attempt to take away our rights. Censorship. It's happening all over the place. And that is fascism. That is exactly book burning, right? Isn't that kind of tied to a certain thing that happened back in World War II? So again, who does that? What authoritarian type people limit what you can say? God forbid you say something that's untrue. God forbid you talk about something that may affect other people. And that's the thing. They keep saying, well, it's such a crazy conspiracy. We shouldn't let you talk about it. But you'll let me talk about a flat earth? You'll let me talk about Bigfoot? Really? Come on. Like, that's obviously not the case. You don't want me to talk about it because it's got some truth to it, it's got some legs to it, and people are starting to wake up. Yes, they're trying to deplatform, remove people, silence, trying to keep you quiet, and they're trying to mail-in vote fraud dilute. Now, one of the other things that happens with mail-in voting, oddly, is if the election's close in some particular location, all of a sudden, 1,000 ballots magically show up, and they seem to always lean in the direction that needs the help. Funny how it plays out. But water down the constitutional, right? Take away our rights. That's what they're trying to do. They wanted to turn this into a military state. They wanted China to become the new rulers, and they wanted America to essentially become a third world nation. And if they would have kept the economy shut down as long as they wanted to, and if the wars against North Korea and Iran happened like they wanted to, this country would be a smoldering smidgen of what it is currently. Remember, we have freedom of speech. That's that First Amendment right. We have that right, folks. Don't give that right up ever. That's your right. That is your God-given right. It wasn't given to you by the government. It wasn't given to you by the Constitution. The Constitution acknowledges that is your right. That is my right, period. And that supersedes any law of the land. So please reread the Constitution. In fact, there'll be a nice little reminder coming up shortly. I love this picture. First off, this guy just looks totally bad arse, and he's probably somebody tough that I should maybe recognize, like a SEAL or something, but whatever. Post 4331, armed with his keyboard. Intelligence was manipulated by Brennan. Watch the news. What does that mean? Intelligence was manipulated by Brennan. Something that's kind of interesting about this whole thing that's come out now, just right now. But apparently that whole CrowdStrike thing, you guys remember the server with the emails and Hillary, and it got hacked by Russia, right? Got hacked. Russia hacked it because they're trying to affect the election. They want to put Trump into office because, I don't know, Hillary smells funny. I don't know. It's probably true. But that being said, what apparently happened when CrowdStrike got a hold of the box and looked at it and said, oh yeah, it's definitely been affected by Russia, that's actually not true. That's completely false. That's not true, completely false, and here's where it comes down to it. President Sean Henry of the CrowdStrike, president, and I will say, oddly, my brother works for CrowdStrike. We're not on talking terms right now because he's super far left, and anyway. There's not evidence that documents and emails were actually exfiltrated from the Democratic National Committee servers. There's circumstantial evidence, but no evidence that they were actually exfiltrated, which means actually exited, filtered, shoot the data out, pushed it out, right? Like I pulled it from Russia across the Atlantic. Now, many have talked about, one, just the impossibility of the speeds. Two, now they're saying there's evidence, but no direct, there's circumstantial evidence, but no evidence. And again, when people fake stuff, which is what he's hinting at with Brennan, when the CIA goes in and makes it look like someone hacked something, what they typically do, especially if they want to frame Russia or Ukraine, is they tend to use words that are kind of more lingo for those regions. So a lot of times you might have variables in your code, you might have all sorts of different things. Well, oftentimes these variables can be little Ukrainian words, Russian words, whatever. They do little things like that to sort of give it away. And it's false. And any real good hacker that knows their stuff doesn't leave behind trails and certainly isn't leaving a language behind unless they want to make people think something else. A truly good hacker is not that stupid. So again, someone was behind this if it's that easy to figure out. Otherwise, it's not a government. This would be just like some schmo that's 12 years old that's got a computer, just hacked his mom's phone bill so she never has to pay the phone record ever again, and now he's trying to get into the FBI or something. Again, it's that kind of person that does stupid stuff like that, not these types of people. So there's definitely a cover-up of some kind going up. The other thing I just kind of want to point out, and I don't know if this is where I'm supposed to get on this rant or not, but the constant that Russia was trying to interfere with our elections, that Russia was hacking us, like, of course they were. Duh. China tries to affect our elections. China hacks us. Korea tries to affect our elections. Korea hacks us. Taiwan hacks us. China hacks us. India hacks us. We get hacked by everybody. Everybody hacks us. And anybody that's got any sort of agenda is probably trying to sway us one way or the other. Now, outside of hacking, which is basically where you kind of brute force your way in, you get through a firewall, you have a password, something crazy like that, versus phishing, which is a very different game. And that's where a lot of these things happen. That's what they're calling hacking, are actual phishing scams. And what a phishing scam is that's when they send you that email that looks just like your Verizon account's going to be closed. So go ahead and type in your password and click this link, type in your password, type in your account name, and we'll turn you back on. And that's a phishing scam, because what that is a company or individual that made a website that looks exactly like another website. Usually when you look at the actual web address, it does not say Verizon.something, right? It says xyxz dot something blah 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 dot Verizon dot whatever, right? So it's never the term. It's never correct. Those things happen all the time. That is not the same thing. And again, they're lumping a lot of this context into a big giant bucket, and it's not fair. So that's, again, just a few things to point out from that. Now, this is really cool and super important to remember. 4332, the next post. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men and women, deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed, that whenever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and the organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence, indeed, will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for the light and transient causes, and accordingly all experiences hath shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer, while evils are sufferable than to the rights themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are unaccustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations, pursuing invariably the same object, evinces a design to reduce them under the absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. It's a pretty important little part of our Constitution, right? That is the key to all of this, is our rights. We deserve these rights, the Bill of Rights, either or. And if things aren't working properly, if it is no longer we the people that the government serves, then the government's no longer serving who they're supposed to serve. And it is we the people who have the responsibility to make sure that we fix this. Now, right now, many of us have voted in somebody that it seems might be very successful at finally ridding us of this evil enterprise that has been running around inside our governments for a very long time. Something to keep in mind. Post 4333. We'll try that number. When do you expend ammunition? Super important, right? HRC directed attack regarding Q. There was an article that referenced a quote she made. I wish we could have heard the actual quote. I really don't like when referenced quotes happen, but whatever. But the big question is why? Why are they attacking Q? Now, if someone's looked it up here, and MSDNC articles over the past 2 years, written and published, there's been 2,200 plus articles that have intentionally spoken poorly of this Q movement, of this whole conspiracy that's crazy, that's got no truth in it whatsoever. Yet they shut down channels, they block videos, they do all sorts of crazy things. But again, it's just a conspiracy theory. Just like Bigfoot, just like Flat Earth, just like, same thing, except I can watch videos on any one of those anytime I want. So who's controlling the narrative? And who's scared about the narrative and the direction the narrative's going? Right now, it's being controlled by us, the patriots, and they don't like that. They want you to go back to watching MSDNC or CNN or whatever these crazy networks are. Remember, logical thinking and follow the money and or money and power. Who is trying desperately to hold on to power? Who's trying desperately to get power back? And who's desperately trying to fight for the American people, for our rights, and constantly tells us that he's doing this for us? And it's evident that he's doing this for us. That's why we keep calling this information warfare, and the Great Awakening for that matter. Because it's an issue of people waking up to what's actually going on around them, not the BS that they keep getting told. First little section of this is really cool. I kind of wanted to cover it just because it gets into the standard rigmarole that they always say about QAnon.
Trump administration's latest director of national intelligence, John Ratcliffe, is now 24 hours into his new job. The former Republican congressman was sworn in yesterday, but his nomination and confirmation didn't come without controversy and pushback from Democrats earlier this month. Reports pointed out that his now defunct official campaign Twitter account followed other accounts linked to QAnon, an online conspiracy theory group. It's unclear if it was Ratcliffe or others with access to his Twitter feed following those accounts. As Ratcliffe leaves Congress, other candidates itching to get to Capitol Hill also appear to have connections to QAnon, including Oregon Republican Senate nominee Joe Ray Perkins.
Where we go one, we go all. I stand with President Trump. I stand with Q and the team. Thank you, Anons, and thank you, Patriots, and together we can save our republic.
She posted this video the night she won the primary, but it has since been taken down. In recent interviews, Perkins said she was, quote, bummed that her campaign consultants removed the clip. Let's bring in CNET senior producer Dan Patterson to talk about this. Dan, first help us understand QAnon. Followers are entrenched in American politics, and they call themselves patriots. What is their worldview of Washington and the political arena?
Yes, so we have talked about this group, QAnon, for the last 18 months or so in the context of them being a hard right and fringe conspiracy group. So this organization, this group, believes that there is a, air quotes, deep state conspiracy to take down Donald Trump connected to cannibalistic Democrats who also are involved in pedophilia and child trafficking. None of this is true.
Of course not. None of this is true. Again, I don't want to listen to all this nonsense. They're going to show the worst of the worst, and in a lot of cases, these aren't even actual Q people. But the thing to remember is, obviously, we are peaceful people. We always peacefully organize, right? And that's very important to all of us. Also, I'm just saying, if you're going to use air quotes, use friggin' air quotes. Do the finger thing. Come on, man. Don't just say it. That's stupid. You're on camera. I can see you. That's silly. That being said, this is not the direction that Q is. We are not this crazy hardcore right-wing conspiracy group. We're probably a lot of right to right-centered, even probably into the left center. There's a large group of people that are waking up to this concept. It's a beautiful time to come together right now. So again, just things to keep in mind, but they're obviously going out of their way to try to badmouth us, that we're running around thinking this is just about pedophilia and people eating babies. No, it's more than that, and it's not just about the adrena stuff, right? It's more than that. There's a deep-seated control that has been happening on this planet that we are attempting to take away. And I frankly think it's more on the side of evil than it is anything, probably. Anyway, 4334, the more you know. That seems to always be the secret in life, doesn't it? We've got one more post, guys. We're almost there. But this was the cool part I promised you. 96% of coronavirus fatalities had other chronic illnesses. This is from Italy. Breitbart News, right? That's a, I think, left-leaning place, isn't it? Or anyway, it doesn't matter. That being said, 96%, they had other things wrong too. I'm not saying that it wasn't COVID. I'm not saying anything crazy like that. But what I am saying is they had a whole lot of other stuff going on, and 96% of the time, right? It wasn't just the one thing. And Italy had a huge number of deaths. So again, good thing to know there, right? Finally, 4335, quarantine, I'm using finger quotes, is when you restrict the movement of sick people. Makes sense, right? You quarantined. I'm not going to allow you to go anywhere. I'm going to put you in this room for 1 week and make sure you don't turn into a nastiness and somehow get other people sick and kill us all, right? I'm going to lock you up, and that's called quarantine. Tyranny, that's a different thing. Tyranny is actually when you restrict the movement of people that are healthy. And I think the big point to remember is if a small percentage of our population, who's very likely already either in a hospital or a nursing home, if a small percentage of our population is very high risk, then that small percentage of people, we need to figure out a way to protect them. But you don't do that by shutting down the other 96% of society, just to make sure this 4% can stay healthy. That's not okay. That's just not how it works. So we've got to come up with a better way, but we're still going to let the healthy people go out, continue making a living, continue feeding their family, continue going to church, continue making a difference in their communities, and to continue talking about this wonderful movement of people that are waking up to the freedoms that we should have and need to take back. It's on the Fringe with Dan RadioStyle.